It's been quite a while since the US and Iran signed the agreement, yet the details remain unreleased, so the world keeps on guessing. But as for what's actually in the agreement, it's becoming clearer and clearer to me. So today, I'll give you a fairly comprehensive overview. Also, there's some breaking news. Axios reports that sources say the US and Iran are discussing moving up the signing ceremony for the Memorandum of Understanding, originally scheduled for Friday, to Wednesday, which is today. Is that right? So, regardless, the signing ceremony will proceed as planned. It doesn't look like there are any major changes. So, how did Trump pull this off? Also, another topic for today is what our title says, a deep dive into Trump's negotiation tactics. Good Trump, bad Trump. All right, welcome to Good Morning America with Fang Wai. Hello to our YouTube viewers and our listeners on Sound of Hope, Silicon Valley FM 961. We're starting a bit late today, and the internet connection might not be great today, so if you have any feedback, please let our editors know in the comments. That way I can know what's going on and if there are any issues. Hopefully, the network will run smoothly for us today. Okay, let me tell you. Basically, we all know that Iran plays both sides, the hardliners on one hand and the negotiators on the other. But behind the scenes, it's actually the same thing. They're colluding. US intelligence agencies have already found out that their internal communications are quite different from what the negotiators tell US officials. Of course, that's not surprising for a regime like Iran's, but I've always said, why doesn't the US play both sides? Why not have a good America and a bad Israel? Let Israel play the bad cop and the US play the good cop, right? Well, as it turns out, America has its own answer. This is what I've learned recently. JD Vance revealed this on the Gutfeld show yesterday. Basically, having the US play the good cop and Israel play the bad cop is too complicated. Trump just does both himself. So there are two versions of President Trump, good Trump and bad Trump. Trump plays both roles as he pleases without needing to coordinate with anyone. And there are no slip-ups. For example, everyone remembers when Trump was dealing with Kim Jong-un. He said, "You have a nuclear button, I have a nuclear button that's much bigger than yours, much bigger." He said he could blow him to smithereens. But when they met in Singapore and Hanoi, wow, Trump showed a kindness, just like a grandfather. So who is the real Trump? With these two personas, you don't know who he is. But both are him. Trump's goal is to solve problems. How so? I'll explain in detail later. First, let's quickly look at the latest updates on the US-Iran agreement. What exactly is in the agreement? First of all, what's going on? What's so special about this agreement? Is there some kind of conspiracy? Why hasn't it been released yet? Do you know why? Vice President Vance said, "I don't know." He said we can release it anytime, but the mediators, Pakistan and Qatar, insist on following their own procedures. So he said it could be released by Friday at the latest. Well, we can bring it out at any time. There's nothing to hide. So I think everyone shouldn't guess wildly. Some say there's a conspiracy theory with this or that hidden inside. Trump also clearly said this agreement can be given to Congress. He said, "I don't think anyone will oppose it." He couldn't even imagine who would oppose such an agreement. Of course, the second question is still what the content of the agreement actually is. Right now, just I alone have seen 5 versions. The Iranian government released 2 versions, Saudi media released 1, Israeli media released 1, and the American media, Bloomberg, released another version. You tell me, what should we do about this? The most recent one is the Bloomberg version, but in my view, it's not the final version. Why? Because it only says that Iran won't develop nuclear weapons. But Trump said it 3 times, that it's not just about not developing them, but also not buying them and not obtaining them by any method or means. So that language isn't in there. Therefore, I believe the Bloomberg version isn't the final one. However, I think the Bloomberg version is close enough, so the general idea should be clear. All right, I'll integrate the whole situation I see now, and of course, add my own judgment. I'll give you a preview of roughly what the content of this agreement is. First of all, both sides will lift blockades, including Iran participating in clearing sea mines and restoring shipping to pre-war levels. That's the first point. The second is that the United States will lift the oil embargo on Iran, allowing Iran to sell oil. You know, this is equivalent to lifting some sanctions on Iran. The West and the United States have comprehensive sanctions on Iran, including oil. So for Iran to sell oil, they have to use shadow fleets to load the ships and transport it out secretly. Along the way, they even have to turn off their shipping systems. When passing through certain ports, they have to make sure no one notices. In the end, they can only sell to countries that aren't afraid of offending the United States. Who's that? Communist China. So that's why Iranian oil is sold very cheaply, because the CCP won't be polite either. They basically only buy at your discounted price. They won't buy at the original price. So when the United States says, I can lift the oil embargo on Iran, it's equivalent to lifting part of the sanctions. This part of the sanctions is the most lucrative. You could say this is an act of grace from the United States. And what's the reason? I think there are two reasons. First, Iran really can't survive anymore. With things as they are now, what can they sell to get money back? Of course, only oil, right? So that's the first point. As part of the negotiations, let Iran survive. Second, notice that this will directly hurt the CCP. Why? Because if Iran's sanctions are lifted, they won't need to use shadow fleets anymore. They won't have to sell oil at a discount either. They can sell the oil on the open international market, and this price is much higher than what the CCP's so-called teapot tankers in Shandong or Dalian or the teapot refineries pay. So this matter will directly hit the CCP side. Then the third point is the 60-day negotiation. Depending on the negotiation's progress, sanctions could be fully lifted, or the freeze on, what was it, overseas assets could be lifted, including the freeze on overseas deposits. Iran could also get 300 billion. Note, it's not 300 billion in grants or reparations, but 300 billion in foreign investment. That's what it means. Let's not get this wrong. I've seen many political commentators who haven't figured this out. They ask, how can we pay 300 billion in reparations to Iran? If Iran gets 300 billion, won't they build nuclear weapons? Won't they build ballistic missiles? No, they won't, because that 300 billion doesn't belong to the Iranian government. It's just like SoftBank's investment in the United States. Trump said the US has received 19 trillion in investment, but that 19 trillion isn't money in the Trump administration's hands. It's money from Samsung, SoftBank, and TSMC. They decide where to build factories in the US. It's their choice. They invested, and, well, the profits they make still belong to them. That's how it works. That's what it means. Okay, so the next commitment is that Iran won't develop or buy nuclear weapons. Also, if they behave well, and what does that mean? It means Iran will properly handle enriched uranium according to US requirements, and then their nuclear weapons and programs can be inspected at any time, anywhere. In short, if they're compliant, they can get the benefits I mentioned. These benefits are broken down into pieces, but that breakdown is part of the 60-day negotiation. Currently, it's not reflected in the MOU. Also, it needs to be filed with the United Nations. Some people ask, what's the point of filing with the United Nations? Well, the goal is for the whole world to see exactly what Iran signed. Would they dare to defy it in secret later? That's the situation. The final point, though, it's not written in the agreement, is that if Iran violates the MOU, Trump said he'd drop bombs directly on their heads. Let me say it again. What's the difference between this agreement and the JCPOA? What is the JCPOA? It's the deal Obama signed with Iran back then. The biggest difference with Obama's JCPOA is that it could only be enforced through talk. But Trump's deal has bombs backing it up. You know, during the Obama era, Iran's military strength was arguably at an all-time high. Like the Soviet Union, their economy was weak, but they poured all their money into weapons, so their military appeared very powerful. Gulf nations didn't dare provoke them, nor did Israel, Europe, or, to be honest, the United States. Why were there no blockades of the Strait of Hormuz before? Because the 7 presidents before Trump, as Professor Hansen from the Hoover Institution noted, actually, he discussed this in a special program on Shintian yesterday, explaining Professor Hansen's very logical analysis. You can watch that program after this one. Professor Hansen said that before President Trump, 7 presidents didn't dare to, get tough with Iran. It wasn't because they liked appeasement. It was because they knew if they got tough, Iran would block the strait, triggering global turmoil. But no one knew how to handle a blockade, so all 7 presidents chose appeasement. Whether through placating or bribing, they just wouldn't get tough with Iran until a president named Trump came along. Trump dared to. So this Iranian blockade of the strait was actually expected, and it's something the US Navy is prepared for decades. But coming into the Trump administration, they created a counter-blockade strategy. You block the strait, I block you. This counter-blockade strategy. So, in the Trump era, this was indeed a gain for President Trump or the United States government. First, if you block the strait, I block you, a counter blockade strategy. Second, Iran has been hit by 42 days of bombing up to today. That's 40 days of bombing before April 8th, plus 2 days of bombing last week. After all that bombing, Iran has been hit to the point where it's not about some unprecedented combat power, but that Iran can't defend itself. Its ability to attack Gulf countries, including Israel, is extremely limited. Basically, over 90% of their attacks are intercepted. So, for the United States or Israel to bomb them is entirely their choice. They can do it whenever they want. These are the two differences from the Obama era after this conflict. Now, some might say, didn't President Trump set four conditions back then? Right? First was the Navy, destroying the Iranian Navy. Second was eliminating Iran's nuclear weapons. Third was stopping their ballistic missile program. Fourth was not allowing Iran to fund proxies everywhere. Okay, so you took out the Navy, but what about the ballistic missiles and the regional proxies? Nothing was done? It's not that nothing was done. Iran's arms industry has been largely crippled, over 80%. 70 to 80% of their ballistic missiles are gone. Without money, Iran can't restore its massive ballistic missile deterrence. They need money. And what about the regional proxies? If Iran can't even pay its own troops today, which is the current reality, how can they give money to regional proxies? How can they fund them? So, actually, with Iran beaten into its current state and facing these economic sanctions, their ballistic missiles and proxies are both failing. Essentially, even without an agreement, they've been wiped out. So, that's why, right now, Trump is only focusing on the nuclear weapons part. Okay, now let's move on. Returning to the topic of good Trump, bad Trump, it's actually very interesting. Trump is a great performer himself. He doesn't need another actor or someone else to play along with them. Where did this saying come from? It was Vance last night on Fox's The Five. Not The Five. On Gutfeld, a late night comedy show on Fox. He said Trump is now showing the good Trump now, whereas before it was bad Trump. So, how to put it? Everyone remembers the situation with North Korea. Trump played two roles there. One was good Trump, the other was bad Trump. But when I say good Trump, bad Trump, it comes from that book Rich Dad, Poor Dad, right? What was it called by that Japanese American guy? Oh my God, I forgot his name. Anyway, it's a very, very famous book on financial management. Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I'm using that as an analogy for good Trump and bad Trump, one person showing two faces. So, with Kim Jong un, why did Trump act like that? Why did he tell Kim Jong un, I have a nuclear button that's much bigger than yours? And yet, when they met, he could be as kind as a grandfather, because Trump wants to solve problems. Whatever attitude he takes is to solve the problem. The problem North Korea and Kim Jong un posed for Trump in the US was the constant firing of missiles to intimidate East Asia, Northeast Asia, and even the US. Trump's solution was to scare you into not moving while also drawing you in. Okay, so how do you scare someone into not moving? It's by using America's superior nuclear arsenal, threatening to turn North Korea into a sea of fire to intimidate Kim Jong un. At the same time, he gave him plenty of the spotlight on the world stage. He showed him enough goodwill, saying, You're my good friend. The result was that Kim Jong un didn't want to offend Trump and even tried to please him. That's why Trump could get back the remains of American soldiers from the Korean War from Kim Jong un without spending a single penny. To this day, Kim Jong un hasn't dared to act out. He doesn't want to ruin the good impression Trump has of him. I don't know if you agree with me, but that's how I see it. Now, regarding Europe, Trump played the role of bad Trump. Why? Because the problem he wanted to solve was that this ally wasn't self reliant. So, Trump's solution was for Europe to become strong and independent, to stop relying on the US. It's like a strict father kicking his child out of the house to make their own living. In this case, there's no need to draw you in. You were already by my side, even leaning on me. So Trump didn't need to be gentle or nurturing. Instead, he played the bad Trump to scare you into not clinging to me. Okay, that's why Trump is so tough on Europe. Some ask, if you do this, will Europe and the US have a falling out? Will Europe turn to the Chinese Communist Party? Well, Macron and Starmer both went to China, didn't they? My opinion, and I'll tell everyone, is that there's zero chance, zero chance. Europe will absolutely not turn to the CCP, regardless of the US. There are three main reasons. First, Europe and China are currently in a trade conflict. Europe now has its largest trade deficit in the world with China. This massive dumping is cutting off, you could even say slaughtering, various European industries, especially manufacturing. As the Chinese saying goes, cutting off someone's livelihood is like killing their parents. This kind of thing is completely incompatible. Europe is so angry now. I think privately, their blood is boiling and they can't take it anymore, even though they still try to act like gentlemen on the surface. But it's a life and death struggle. It's a struggle where if Europe loses, the CCP wins. This is their first sharp conflict. The second is the Russia Ukraine war. The CCP's support for Russia is, for Europe, like someone breaking into your home and bullying you. That's what it is. How could they possibly align with them? Why would they turn to the CCP? Just because things are rough with the US? Europe's GDP is 9 times that of Russia, with 3 times the population. The reason they can't defeat or contain Russia or help Ukraine push them back is because the CCP is behind Russia. Europe is truly gritting its teeth over this. The UK just sanctioned a group of Chinese companies. A media outlet just asked me why they dared to do that. I said it's quite simple. So, is it due to pressure from the United States? I said no, it has nothing to do with US pressure. It's because, to put it bluntly, the CCP's support for Russia is like a direct intrusion right at their doorstep, so Europe simply can't tolerate it. Now, of course, Europe always acts like a gentleman. It doesn't wear its heart on its sleeve like Trump does, so you can't really see it, but they're actually furious inside. Third is the conflict of values between Europe and China, specifically with the CCP. That's mainly about human rights, especially the rights of the Uyghur people. Europe cares deeply about that. Of course, this used to be the biggest issue in Europe China relations, but now it's become the smallest. And why is that? It's because the Russia Ukraine war and trade conflicts are just so massive. So Trump plays the role of a bad dad to Europe, the bad Trump persona. There are no negative consequences. It's actually truly good for Europe. Why do I say that? Well, I have the evidence to back it up. Yesterday, in a small French town called Evian, the place where the water everyone drinks, Evian comes from, that water comes right from that town, Evian-le-Bon. German Chancellor Schultz specifically sent a gift, a birthday gift, a belated birthday gift actually, to Trump. It was a jersey from the German soccer team, the German national soccer team. And on this jersey, it had the number 47 and the name Trump on it. Now, the real significance is that after he presented it, and you could see Trump was very happy, Schultz went on X and posted a tweet saying, "Happy birthday. After all, we're on the same team. Happy belated 80th birthday. After all, we are on the same team." Yeah, it's a belated birthday greeting saying we're on the same team. So, do you see? The child will still come back. That's Europe. It's like America's child. Trump being harsh and kicking you out to fend for yourself isn't necessarily a bad thing for Europe. This child isn't going to turn against their dad over something like this. They might be upset for a while, sure, but they won't become enemies. That's the bad Trump role he plays with Europe. Meanwhile, the role Trump plays toward the CCP is completely different. He plays the good Trump. Because what's the issue Trump is facing? It's that the CCP might flip the table or even attack Taiwan. If they were to flip the table and attack Taiwan, forcing the United States into the conflict, the US just isn't ready right now. Trump's goal now is to rebuild America. It's not just about the massive funding, the military budget needs to be increased. Trump sees that the US is falling behind in many areas, like rare earth metals and shipbuilding. Right now, the US can't even build enough warships. In terms of shipbuilding and steel, everything's been hollowed out. Whether it's large-scale, diverse manufacturing or the security of critical supply chains, from something as small as masks to as big as chips, the US is vulnerable. So if a conflict with China breaks out, we know where the US is currently strong. It's in education and finance. Financial services and things like that, these are part of the service sector, but you can't fight a war with the service sector. When it comes to war, it's all about tanks, warships, missiles, submarines, and drones, right? It's a contest of manufacturing, of steel, of aluminum, of shipbuilding. It's a contest of industrial power. But after decades of global trade, the US has been hollowed out. In reality, the US is currently in a bit of a precarious position. If a fight starts, they could run out of ammunition very quickly. So Trump can't flip the table on the CCP right now, and he can't let them flip it either. His solution is to steady the other side, needing Xi Jinping to come over, saying, "I'll give you hope, let's be good friends." This is why Trump plays the bad Trump, good Trump role with the CCP. So, some people are still criticizing Trump, saying he calls Xi Jinping his good friend and that Trump himself is a dictator. That's a complete misinterpretation. To give another example, with New York City Mayor Mondani, the socialist Mayor Mondani, Trump plays both bad Trump and good Trump. What problem is he trying to solve? It's to stop Mandani from pushing socialism so recklessly. And what's the solution? On one hand, he uses tough talk. If you act up, I'll cut federal funding. 10% of New York's money comes from the federal government. If he cuts that, Mandani will run out of money immediately. So that's his bad Trump side. The good Trump side is letting you in, inviting you to the White House, patting you on the back, and giving you hope that our relationship is great. He makes Mandani care about saving face, so he doesn't dare act recklessly out of fear of offending Trump. That's his method for taming, or rather winning over Mandani. Let me give another example, returning to today's good Trump, bad Trump theme regarding the Iran issue. The problems Trump faces are nuclear weapons, right? And the fact that they oppose the United States. So what's the solution? It's to make it impossible for you to do evil and then encourage you to do good. That's the fundamental meaning behind this US-Iran agreement. If you do evil, I'll bomb you. It sounds incredibly fierce, but if you do good, I'll encourage you. Why does this agreement talk about lifting sanctions? Unfreezing funds, even investing $300 billion. The idea is if you do good, I'll encourage you. So Trump's approach to Iran is being incredibly kind one moment and incredibly harsh the next. I can imagine how Trump negotiates with Iran over the phone. It's surely one way one minute and another way the next. One minute he's fierce and menacing, and the next he's full of compassion and mercy. So the goal is to tame Iran. Even today at the G7, it's the same. One minute he says if the strait remains blocked, it'll cause a global economic recession, meaning we have to stop the blockade. The next minute he says if you don't listen, Iran, I'll bomb you, with bombs falling right on your head. He just says it straight out. So indeed, that's Trump's role. I've mentioned before the best, middle, and worst strategies. The best strategy would be to go all in and eliminate Iran. I still believe that's the best option. But Trump isn't me. He doesn't think that way. The middle strategy is playing the good cop and the bad cop. I previously said it would be perfect if Trump played the good cop and Israel played the bad cop. But Trump is Trump. If he heard me, he'd probably say, that's too complicated, too complicated. I'll play both roles myself with one face. So Trump uses both the carrot and the stick to reach this agreement and get to this point. Well, that's how it is. I don't know if you agree, but this is my observation. If you like Fangway's program, new viewers, please remember to click subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss Fangway's reports on current events and the analysis behind them. All right, for our regular viewers, please give us a like. Next, let's talk about the current situation in the Gulf. According to maritime intelligence firm Windward, initial signs show commercial shipping is preparing to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. A large number of oil tankers have begun preparing to sail out of the Persian Gulf. At the same time, a large group of VLCCs, very large crude carriers, at least 23 of them, are preparing to enter the Persian Gulf, entering the Strait of Hormuz, heading to the United Arab Emirates Khorfaa Khan or Fujairah ports to transport oil, joining at least 30 tankers already anchored there. In short, the current situation is that ships can go out and ships can come in. Now, west of the Strait of Hormuz, inside the Persian Gulf, there are still over 550 stranded vessels that haven't left yet, including 60 tankers fully loaded with oil. Ship owners are preparing for Friday's signing of the Memorandum of Understanding to reopen the strait, and then they'll start heading out. So this might be why the signing was moved up to Wednesday. Why drag it out, right? Sign it as soon as possible. Since everyone's mind is made up, let shipping resume sooner. A senior United States official told Fox's national security reporter that the United States Navy also issued new guidance for vessels in the Strait of Hormuz on Tuesday. In short, everything is moving toward an open-door state where ships can enter and exit freely. And the latest news is that 3 Iranian tankers crossed the United States blockade today. This is Iran's first crude oil export since February. Even before the United States blockade, Iranian tankers were shadow tankers. Iranian oil sales are under United States sanctions, but now they're not being sanctioned. Once these tankers pass, they might not go to Chinese ports, they could go elsewhere. Whoever pays the highest price gets it, right? That's how it is. International oil prices fell over 5% yesterday, Tuesday, continuing the decline from earlier this week because the market is optimistic that a potential United States Iran deal could help ease Middle East tensions. So oil prices keep falling. There's a slight rebound today, which I think is just profit taking. I saw a viewer say yesterday, Feng Wei, you said oil prices would drop to $50. He said my words have no basis and I didn't give a timeline. I said it's before November. Didn't I say that yesterday? I believe if this agreement is honored, oil prices will continue to fall. I think the average domestic United States gas price will drop below $2.80. And international crude oil prices will drop to $50. Right. So, in this regard, I think this is my prediction. We'll just see how things go. Okay, now another thing Trump is doing is continuing to push the Abraham Accords. What's the situation? The United States is negotiating with the Palestinian Authority to repair relations. One move Trump is making is pushing to transfer billions in Palestinian tax revenue withheld by Israel to the United States backed Gaza Peace Committee for Gaza's reconstruction, which would eventually be ruled by the Palestinian Authority after reforms. So, return Gaza to the Palestinian Authority, right? Now, why is Trump doing this at this moment? The reason is the Abraham Accords aim to make the Middle East a place of shared prosperity, maintaining peace, achieving peace, and creating a prosperous Middle East. Its key foundational framework is the Abraham Accords. So, how to do it? Right now, Saudi Arabia hasn't signed yet. The reason Saudi hasn't signed is that you have to settle the issue of Palestinian statehood for me. Otherwise, I really can't sign because Saudi is now the patriarch of the Middle Eastern nations. If it doesn't support its little brother, its very small little brother, on Palestinian statehood or its rights, it would feel like losing face. So, although in other aspects, I think it's willing. But now, Trump is setting out to solve this difficult problem, to get Palestine settled. After that, if Saudi joins, then the entire Middle East might join the Abraham Accords. So, of course, to get this done, to settle Palestine, you definitely have to restrain Israel. But this isn't a big problem. Although this Iran deal made Israel very unhappy, it's mainly the Israeli opposition and the public who are unhappy. Once this matter finally settles down, Israel won't actually have much of an objection. It's not a big problem. First of all, this is about Iran turning over a new leaf. Why is it not a big problem? What exactly is the essence of this agreement? I'll talk about it later because Vice President Vance explained this very clearly.